Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome to second lecture of week 4 of Modernization and Creative Communication. So, today we will be concentrating on the topic shift from tradition to modern communicative paradigms. We have been exploring the shift from traditional to modern communication paradigms, a move from one-way information flow where audiences merely consumed content to a more dynamic and really interactive system. This shift isn't just a communication or technological change, it's a cultural transformation. Think about it. In the past, mass media like radio, TV, newspapers served as the gatekeepers of information. Today, with digital platforms, the scenario is completely different. Now we don't just listen, we comment, share, remix, and even create our own narratives. How do these narratives or these interactions, audience-driven platforms impact the stories and how they are crafted, shared, and received? And perhaps more importantly, we must know what does this kind of situation mean for us as communicators in a world that thrives on participation and creativity. Now, in traditional communication paradigms, the process often followed a very linear communication model where information flowed in a very one-way direction from the sender to receiver and with a very minimal feedback. This framework relied heavily on orality, emphasizing verbal and non-verbal cues such as tone, gestures, and body language as primary means of expression. Right. Now, communication during this era was deeply community centric, rooted in local tradition, cultural norms, and shared practices with tight knit groups. These channels were available largely to a very what we would say static face-to-face conversations, handwritten letters, or basic printed media such as leaflets or newspapers. These channels, while effective for their time, were often time intensive, requiring significant effort and delays for messages to be disseminated and responses to be received. Additionally, the reach of communication was very limited. Interaction was confined to physical proximity or relied on slow transmission methods like postal services, which restricted the ability to share ideas or connect with audience at large, beyond the locals or the geographical boundaries. This traditional model stands in contrast to the dynamic, interactive, and instantaneous nature of modern communication system. First of all, when we talk about the modern way of or modern era of communicative paradigms, we find that unlike the traditional linear and interactive model, we are moving towards a very non-linear and again interactive, but it's non-linear. Think about it. When you post something on social media, you get instant likes, comments and shares. This real-time feedback creates a very dynamic and two-way exchange, making the conversation more lively and more evolving and more collaborative. Now, what makes this possible? It's all mediated by technology. Smartphones, the internet, the social media have become largely the tools we rely on to share our ideas, our opinions, our views, and connect and collaborate. And what is the most remarkable part of it? The communication isn't limited to your local community, and it has a larger platform now. There's a global reach. You can connect with someone on the other side of the world instantly. It is a level of accessibility that was unimaginable in traditional paradigms, right? Another game changer, I would say, is how communication has become very multimodal. Why I say multimodal? It's not no longer just text. We are integrating videos, images and audios, creating more richer and more engaging, I would say, engaging narratives, right? Think of how a simple Instagram post combines a photo, a caption, and maybe even a reel to tell a story. But here's where it gets more interesting. It is the process of personalization. What do you mean by personalization? It is tailored for a specific audience type. Technology now allows us to tailor messages based on what we know about the audience. Platforms like Netflix or Spotify recommend content specifically for you based on your preferences. This kind of tailored communication builds stronger connections and enhances engagement, because of course you will be interested in learning more about it, and you can also share your views, share your opinions, your experience and encounters, right? And finally, the shift in power is more significant here. Why? Because communication is becoming increasingly decentralized. Okay, in the past, large media outlets controlled the narrative. Today, individuals and smaller groups have just as much voice thanks to the blogs, YouTube videos, social media platforms. You have influencers and all. Essentially, anyone with a phone can become a storyteller or a newsreader or a reporter, right? So what do you think? How has this transformation affected the way we share, consume and perceive information? Let's think about how much the way we communicate has changed over the years. In the past, communication was pretty straightforward. One person spoke or wrote and the other person simply listened or read. Every time you post a picture, now you have a very different experience altogether. Earlier, feedback system was there, of course, but it came at a very slow and minimal speed. Now, how much time it takes to get a response? Not even a fraction of seconds, right? So, you are engaging in completely different communication model. Once the model which is shaped completely by interactivity, real-time feedback and collaboration. What what is so fascinating about modern communication is how dynamic it's becoming. It's no longer just about sending a message. It's about creating a message together with many kinds of views, many kinds of experience that can be attached to it. Think of a conversation on social media where someone shares a post, others comment, and the discussion evolves. Everyone contributes, shaping the message in ways the original sender might not have thought of. The person might not have anticipated how his comment or her statement would have evolved, right? Communication today is not created, it is co-created, with meaning emerging from the interaction itself, not just from one person's insight, one person's viewpoint. Now let's talk about the technology's role in all these things. Smartphones, social media, and digital platforms, as you know, have completely changed the game, right? You are not just writing emails or making phone calls. You are sending videos, sharing memes, reacting with emojis, and even collaborating on a Google Doc that itself in the real time frame, right? So all these things make our work easier. That goes without saying, right? Ever noticed how a simple caption paired with a right picture or a right reel can say much more than just words? That's the power of multimodal communication system that we are experiencing today. But here's the real game changer, as I have already told you: context and personalization, which is very much important when it comes to understanding the role of communication or the change in communication pattern with the help of technology. Technology today allows messages to adapt to who you are, where you are, and what you like. Platforms like I have already mentioned, Netflix or Spotify, know your preferences and tailor your recommendations just for you. That kind of personalization makes communication feel more relevant and meaningful. This shift is beautifully captured in the Gamble and Gamble communication model. Instead of treating communication as one-way street, it sees it as a continuous back and forth process. Everyone involved in this plays an active role, and the context, your relationships with the environment, and even the cultural background matters a lot. It's a model that mirrors the way we actually communicate now: fluid, collaborative, and ever evolving. Now, let's think about this. How has this transformation changed the way you connect with others? Do you feel empowered to express yourself, or does all this interactivity sometimes feel overwhelming? Let's dive deeper and explore these ideas. Before we go on to the Gamble and Gamble communication model, let us find out what are the models we are familiar with. In the past, as I said, communication was very much one-way process. Why I say so? If you go through this Aristotle's model of communication, which was the first model of communication we had received, through texts. Aristotle's communication model, I would say, is one of the earliest and most influential framework in communication theory. If anyone has to make someone understand the elements present in communication, we have to start with Aristotle's model of communication. But it's a linear model that focuses on the process of persuasion, particularly in the public speaking. Aristotle emphasized on the importance of tailoring the message to the audience to achieve desired impact. Now, if you see the model here, you will find there are 4 important elements mentioned. One is the speaker, whom we call sender, right? The person delivering the message, the speaker's credibility, or what you call the ethos, emotional, or the pathos, emotional appeal, and the logos, logical reasoning are crucial to this persuasion. Why so? Because earlier, as I had already said in the previous slide, that we were more into the orality system. The messages, one used to speak, the others used to listen. So speaker's role was very much clearly defined in Aristotle's model of communication. Now, next comes element called message. As we all know, the content or the idea the speaker wants to communicate, which remains the same till date, right? Then there is audience. Audience are the one who receives the message, the group or individual to whom the message is directed. The model assumes a passive audience that is influenced by speaker's ability to persuade. So here, what is missing is the feedback system, which means it is taken for granted that speaker will speak, would like to persuade their audience, but audience has no role to play here. Only the thing is they have to listen. Now there is called occasion, which we nowadays we call it as context. That context means, or occasion, what according to Aristotle means the setting or purpose of this communication, which influences how the message is delivered, right? Now, what is the strength of this model? It emphasizes the importance of speaker skill and message clarity, and secondly, highlights the role of persuasion in effective communication. But this one-way model had its limitation. What are the limitations? First, it is a one-way, assuming that the audience plays a passive role and does not provide feedback. So audience remain mum. Okay, they have no right to speak here or counter speak or give their responses, right? Secondly, it focuses mainly on public speaking, not one-to-one interactions, no conversation here. It's like the speaker will come onto the stage and start delivering, and is less applicable to this what we call as interactive processes. There is nothing, as we know, in our daily conversation interactions, no discussions. It's just a one-way process. These are the 2 limitations. Now we come to another model that we started with when we started teaching or we started learning about communication channel. That was Shannon-Weaver model of communication. The Shannon-Weaver model of communication, developed by Claude Shannon and Warren Weaver in 1948, is a mathematical and linear model that emphasizes the technical process of communication. So, if you are teaching or if you are trying to make someone understand the basic communication pattern, I think Shannon-Weaver's model of communication is the one model. Okay. Now, it was initially designed for telephone and telegraph systems, but has since been applied to human communication as well. Now, let us see what are the elements present in this channel of communication or this model of communication. There are particularly 6 elements present in this communication model. First, the sender. As you all know, the person who devises or generates the message, the sender. Then there is something called encoder. What is encoder? Even the sender himself or herself who converts the message into signals or into a way through which it will be suitable for the transmission of the message to the sender. Okay, so the sender encodes the message, or he or she filters which medium should be taken into consideration medium should be taken into consideration to formulate the message and send it to the receiver, right. Then after the message is formed and given a shape, it is sent through a channel. What is the channel? A source through which the message travels. As you all know, it has to travel to the receiver. Now, the receiver has another role to play. He or she decodes it. How she decodes it? By understanding the language and perceiving the way the receiver wants to understand the message. Of course, the background knowledge also helps the receiver to decode what the sender has sent. Okay. So, the person or the system that interprets, decodes or understand the system, understand the message is known as the receiver. Now, after receiving the message, the receiver also sends a response. This response is known as feedback, or we call it the reverse flow of information from the receiver to the sender. Here, a new element that Shannon-Weaver model takes care of is noise. Noise is any interference or distortion that affects the clarity of the message. Say for example, background noise, any physical noise, these kind of elements which interferes into the communication channel is known as noise. This is the basic understanding of Shannon-Weaver model of communication. Now, what are the strengths of this model? First, it highlights the role of noise and technical barriers to communication, offers a clear framework for understanding message transmission in technical systems. But this model also comes with few limitations. First, it assumes communication is linear and one way. Again, there is only the role of a sender, and again the receiver will receive it, and again there will be a feedback. So, it is always the one way, either from the sender or the receiver, again from the receiver to the sender. But then it is cyclic, it's a cyclic, maybe not a linear but a cyclic one. There is no interference of the other. It also focuses on the technical aspects of communication. Technically speaking, it is fine, but it neglects the emotional and contextual dimensions. This is one of the problems of Shannon-Weaver's model of communication. So, both the models provide foundational insights into communication, with Aristotle's model focusing on persuasion and audience engagement, and Shannon-Weaver's model emphasizing the technical process of message transmission. However, they share a limitation, the limitation of being linear or cyclic and less applicable to our modern interactive communication paradigm. Aristotle's and Shannon Weaver's communication models, while foundational, reflect traditional paradigms of communication. These models primarily view communication as somehow linear in process, focusing on transmission of messages from a sender to a receiver and receiver to a sender. However, modern communication has evolved dramatically and with advancement in technology and shifts in cultural practices. Today's communication is very dynamic, interactive and collaborative, requiring a more nuanced and nuanced model that accounts for real-time feedback, co-creating of meaning and context sensitivity. Now please watch this video. This is an advertisement of Nescafe, and this guy is a radio jockey and tries to, gather audience.
But no ting tong, I'll play the next song. सुना था जो जागत है वो पावत है, पर यहाँ तो अकेला ऋषि रावत है। क्या क्या नहीं किया आपसे ये फोन बजवाने के लिए। No ting tong, I'll play your next song. तो एक जोक मैंने सुनाया, अब एक जोक आप सुनाओ। मेरी नई कॉलर ट्यून। 2 पासेस फ्री, 2 वाउचर्स फ्री, 1 छाता फ्री। आज मेरा बर्थडे है, प्लीज फोन करो। पर लगता है किस्मत भी 8 बजे के बाद ही जागती है।
कोई सुनेगा नहीं तो फोन कैसे बजेगा?
कोई नहीं सुनेगा तभी तो फोन बजेगा। दिन करिए शुरू, दिल हल्का करके गुरु, मन की सारी भड़ास यहाँ निकालिए, नंबर घुमाइए क्योंकि हमें कोई नहीं सुन रहा। But no ting tong, I'll play the next song.
आरजे ऋषि, हमें कोई नहीं सुन रहा ना?
Thank you, yes.
मेरा बॉस कंजूस, खड़ूस, लड़ूस, 2 पैसे की अकल नहीं।
मेरे भाई कार्तिक को सॉरी कहना चाहता हूँ। सॉरी ब्रो, माफ कर दे यार। मीला, I love you.
I miss you.
Stay started with Nescafe mornings, जहाँ 1 कप कॉफी और एक ढीठ आरजे फिर भी लगे हुए हैं।
Nestle, good food, good life.
So, what you understand from this video, that here the sender not only persuades, but he could finally engage a large number of audience for himself. This is where the gamble and gambles or circle model of communication comes into play. The gamble and gamble communication model provides a framework that addresses these needs. It views communication not as a one-way process, but as a continuous and reciprocal interaction. This model aligns with the realities of modern communication, where meaning is actively constructed by participants, influenced by their relationships, where meaning, not only relationships, the environments and cultural contexts. It is particularly relevant in a digital and networked environments where multimodal and creative places, multimodal, creative, decentralized communication dominates, right? So, if you want to go through this, once you go through this model, you will find out that why gamble and gamble fits into. I would give 3 basic reasons. First of all, it is dynamic in nature. Second, it is collaborative, meaning making. Third, it has a context and can personalize your messages. And fourth, it integrates with technology. The transition, thus, from traditional to modern communication paradigms is not incidental, but driven by a confluence of critical factors. These drivers reflect broader technological, cultural, economic, and situational transformations in society, which collectively shape how we communicate today. One of the most significant drivers is technological innovations that we have already mentioned. Say for instance, platforms like Zoom and Slack facilitate collaborative interactions, while AI-driven chatbot enhances real-time customer engagement. These technological foundation has not only accelerated the speed of communication, but I would say also expanded its possibilities, making interaction more accessible and diverse and inclusive. Second reason is, of course, globalization. It is another factor that comes into play. Digital communication platforms have risen to meet this demand of global needs, global connectivity, enabling real-time interactions, reaching to everyone with fraction of seconds. So the expectations of being able to reach anyone, anywhere and at any time underscores the critical role of globalization, and that actually has shaped modern communicative practices in a much different way than it was in the earlier times. Simultaneously, there is a lot of cultural shifts. The cultural shifts have redefined the values associated with communication. Modern societies places a premium on speed, efficiency and individuality. These cultural priorities are reflected in the tools and platforms that dominate contemporary communication. Personalized messaging, self-expression through social media and the demand for instant responses exemplify this shift. Then we have, of course, the economic factors. The cost effectiveness and scalability of digital communication have made it a preferred choice for business and individuals alike. Virtual meetings, for example, significantly have reduced the travel time and all. And lastly, external crises such as the COVID-19 pandemic have accelerated the adoption of modern communication paradigms. So we have already seen during the pandemic how physical distancing measures necessitated a shift, and that we have adopted to such shift. So shift to modern communication paradigms too, very easy and well developed paradigms. We have come to this position where three categories are largely benefited. First, the individuals. For the individuals, this shift has enhanced opportunity for expression, self-expression and networking with larger audience. This shift also highlights the need for digital literacy and adaptability, navigating evolving technologies, discerning credible information and effectively using digital tools. And these are now essential skills for both individuals and organizations. Then we would say at the same time there are challenges in maintaining meaningful interpersonal connectivity. So while digital tools make communication faster and more convenient, they often lack the emotional depth of face-to-face interaction, risking some kind of superficial or disconnected relationship. Now let's talk about the organization. Yes, transformation. First, let us consider this, marketing, PR and customer relations. So, modern communication devices have revolutionized how brands interact with audience. Marketing has moved from traditional advertising to dynamic interactive campaigns or digital platforms, right? Next, let us talk about the workshops. Virtual workshops and remote communication tools have helped the organizations to drive the audience for better decision making, better connectivity with the customers, and better connectivity with their clients and stakeholders. Now, for the society at large, I would say it has first, it has broadened the cultural horizon and cultural exchanges. Next, modern communication has fostered greater inclusivity, and at the same time it presents risk of polarization. On one hand, digital tools amplify marginalized voices, promote diversity, and create spaces for underprivileged communities to connect and advocate for change. Lastly, ethical consideration around technology use and regulations are becoming increasingly critical. Issues such as privacy, misinformation, and ethical deployment of AI demand careful oversight. So, governments are also taking care of it. Okay. So, for example, regulating data use or addressing cyberbullying and combating fake news are essential for creating a fair and trustworthy digital landscape. Okay. Now, when moving forward, we would like to see the shift in three major areas. First is, of course, we need to embrace digital literacy for both individuals and organization to take the most out of it, and this way, looking forward to modernization of communication or the modern practices, I would say it has developed critical thinking as well, and we should develop critical thinking because we have to combat the challenges that I was talking about, the cyberbullying, the fake news. So, we have to be more careful before accepting any kind of information. Then we have to foster ethical communication practices. With increased access to global audience comes the responsibility to communicate with integrity, inclusivity, and respect. Okay. And lastly, I would say another critical aspect of navigating this shift is the effort to bridge the digital divide. While digital platforms offer immense possibilities, not everyone has equitable access to these tools and resources. So, we would be talking more about the digital divide here. And lastly, while embracing technology is vital, it is equally important to balance technology with human connection. So, in conclusion, I would say the transition from traditional to modern communication paradigms represents a profound evolution in how we connect, we collaborate, and share information. Traditional models emphasized clarity, hierarchy, and linearity, serving well in their time. However, our times, our situations have changed. Our modern paradigms prioritize interactivity, inclusivity, and adaptability, reflecting the dynamic nature of today's digital world. Thank you.